Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Krishna Thiagarajan, who serves as president and CEO of the Seattle Symphony. Krishna, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. Big pleasure to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you on the show. Obviously, it's wonderful partnering on Arts Engines, but also Sphinx has been able to partner with the Seattle Symphony in so many ways. You've played such a leadership role with that, with Nas, et cetera. And so it's just so much tremendous work. We could talk about many things, but I thought I would just start off with, if you could share for our audience kind of what's going on in Seattle, right? Like we're kind of, we've come out of this unique couple of years. Many organizations are finding themselves in new places. And so it's just wondering if you could kind of just share with everyone kind of just the overall scope of what the symphony is doing currently in Seattle, how things are.
So we're back to full season, full masterworks, pops, community concerts, education concerts, family concerts, everything that we used to do. The rentals in the hall, that still needs to catch up a little bit as other organizations are finding their footing. But we put, during the pandemic, we put in place something called the Community Stages Fund to actually help smaller organizations to have access to Benaroya Hall's, air exchange rates and safety. And of course, now we are moving towards an environment where masking is no longer required. So it's beginning to, I would say, normalize to whatever that new normal is. But we are also incredibly fortunate in that we never really stopped, right? We came back to the stage in September of 2020 with masks and online performances only. So we've been playing this whole time, except now the hall is filling up. And I think the December, and as the current January is progressing, December and January have really been they've been better than December and January were in 2019. So we are cautiously optimistic. People are coming back, and we love to see them here.
That is awesome and amazing to hear. And of course, is a testament, to, I think, the orchestra and the commitment on the part of your community who want to engage. And maybe one kind of follow up with that. And, there are so many different people in leadership roles with orchestras around the country who are tuning into the show. And are there, as kind of coming out of this unique period for the last couple of years, are there any things that you feel kind of will be permanently different for you, for the Seattle Symphony? Are there any things that, like, even that we're past all of this, we're going to kind of probably do this maybe differently, really permanently moving forward because we found a good response to it or we found it worked better?
So I'm very careful to make permanent predictions because nature has a way to teach us that there's no such thing as permanence on anything, but we've become more flexible in our planning. And I think that served us very well. There's a balance there between exhausting yourself and being very flexible, but I think we're going to find that balance on staying a little bit more flexible. We are also becoming we're more in tune with our communities. We're more in tune with what do people want to hear, what do they not know, what do they want to be introduced to. Sometimes we make some choices on their behalf. And what that has led to is, by and large, a rejuvenated audience. So we still have our traditional audience, and we love them, and we want them to be here. But we're also reaching out to new people, and it's successful. We can see just by being in the hall that new audiences are coming to this hall, and they're adopting it as an extension of their living room, and that's what we want.
Awesome. And on that front, right? So the communities that orchestras, reside in, whether it's directly locally or regionally, and many orchestras are doing this work of saying, oh, are there, populations, representations in our community that we may not have had as strong a historical connection, et cetera? How are we looking into that? Could you help us kind of understand for the audience, what does that look like in Seattle? And of course, I think there are indigenous communities there. Could you kind of just share what is both that environment with the community and what steps have you been leading on the part of the orchestra engaging them?
Yeah, so of course we have a very strong commitment to DE&I and equity and inclusion as we go forward. And traditionally underrepresented groups in Seattle include African Americans, Black, Latinx, Asian, but there's also a very strong indigenous community. And one of the things that occurred to me early on, so this takes us back to 1989 when I'm a young student at Indiana University, Bloomington, and I'm traveling through upstate New York on one of those vacations, just sightseeing. And I'm seeing names like Poughkeepsie and Schenectady, and I'm thinking, where's this language coming from? And where are the people that are with this language? And so when you come out to Seattle, that the language is everywhere, but the indigenous population that used to be 95% about 150 years ago of the population here is now down to less than 5%. And it's interesting because we changed during the pandemic the lead-in, the voice of God, that you hear before the concert starts. And it is a land recognition acknowledgement to acknowledge that we are on indigenous lands, and in our case, the Duwamish people. And there were a lot of questions. Why are you doing this? Why is this a political move? Are you trying to curry favor? And the answer is no, this is something that the orchestra and the organization has been engaging with for a long time. And one of the first steps that we're taking is actually as far back as 2006, when the Seattle Symphony Orchestra premiered The Healing Heart of the First People of This Land. And the journey since then has been ongoing. And one of the things that we really felt was that we need to make sure that every community feels at home in Seattle Symphony. But the indigenous community, if you think about it, they were our first storytellers, our first singers, our first musicians in this space. So they absolutely need to think of Benaroya Hall as an extension, not just of their living rooms, but of their longhouses, their performance spaces, whatever else you want to call it. They need to feel like this is their home.
That is awesome. And I love so many key points that you shared of that, which to me are kind of go to these best practices of engaging community and the authenticity, right? Oh, we're not just, some, political purpose, et cetera, or so on and so forth. But the authenticity of saying there is, the tie-in with the community connects us directly to our mission and, to be frank, our history. And so I think that's incredible. One thing is that I know that, a lot of organizations where leaders in different positions are tuned into the show, and they might be looking at doing some of this work. And sometimes they come across some obstacles or challenges, et cetera. As the Seattle Symphony has gone about this, are there either any key challenges or problems that arose where you found here was a great kind of best practice to address it, or things that really helped for this to be such a success for you?
I definitely. And I think one of the biggest learning curves for me was just individually was to understand that the role of culture, music, and song repertoire plays in the indigenous community. And it is very, very interesting because the more we got involved in this conversation, it was about a learning curve for us. And while if you look back 20 years ago and you look at community work, there's a lot of this outreach mentality. We come to your community, we show you what Mozart is, we show you what Beethoven is, and then your life is better, which of course we know today is not a good approach at all. We can share Mozart and Beethoven with you, but when we're coming to your community, we are usually at a deficit at understanding what your community has done and what your community brings in values and in cultural, just the breadth and width of this culture, and especially with the indigenous community. I think there's a real deficit in what is being taught still. It's getting better, but there's a deficit in what's being taught in schools. I can tell you in my bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in piano performance, the indigenous culture did not come up in teaching. So one of the important things to build trust was to be in listening mode. And the other thing to build trust is to go to their community and engage with them in their music making, in their storytelling, in their songwriting. And we have done that over the years through our in-house ensembles. I was at a longhouse performance with the Suquamish tribe very early in 2019, and I came away just a changed human being, because one of the things that I learned was that the poetry, the storytelling, it is a part of the individual that tells it. So, for instance, when we say, hey, can you come on stage and sing for us or tell a story for us, and then we're going to charge money for that and people are going to buy it, you actually can't do that, because it is like saying, I'm going to give you my right arm and you're going to sell that on stage and buy it, right? It is that close of a relationship. And I think a lot of people don't know enough about it. I certainly didn't, but we're beginning to understand that. So when we're bringing back the Potlatch Symphony, which is one of the joint commissions that we have, and we had it scheduled for the pandemic. Now it's coming next year, finally, or later in the season. What's really important is to know that tribal elders have to give permission for that material to be performed every single time. And it's not a transactional thing like in our music world where it's okay, I'll pay a license fee. It's not about that at all. It is the permission that this intellectual, philosophical, artistic property can be shared with others, because it doesn't belong to you, but we're willing to share it with you.
It is just extraordinary. It's beautiful. And again, it's that insight into how there are these different views and valuations of our collective art making, and how the symphony isn't just looking at, as you said, doing the outreach, but actually really truly engaging. It's amazing and awesome work. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of our leaders, right? You lead obviously this extraordinary institution, this amazing community, doing this engaging work that is so important and impacts so many lives. But there's got to be tough days where it seems like things aren't going right, et cetera. And just wondering, as a leader, where do you turn to for inspiration, for strength, or for solace during the toughest of times?
So I have a close group of friends and family, and they know me, and we lift each other up. But I don't want to sound cheesy. What really works for me is to go to a concert and to be moved by the music that we make, and then to see the expression in an individual audience member's eye that concert changed their life. Because you know, the work we do is actually not easy. It's not prescribed anywhere. There's no manual how to do this right. Every day is a different challenge. Every year starts at zero with funding. There's never a time when you go, I got this lick. This is piece of cake. But we are in the business of connecting musicians and music with audience. And when that works and the audience comes out saying, I really needed this concert and it really changed my life, that's when I come out of it saying we did something good tonight.
Krishna Thiagarajan, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much. Thank you.